Welcome back. This is going to be the third part of looking at the Rhino interface. My last part dealt a lot with a lot of the tools. I totally neglected anything that was happening in these panels over here. I'm trying to go through this really quickly. I kind of mentioned some of these things in passing, but didn't really look at any of them in depth. I don't know how in depth this will be, but it will be a little bit more concise than the last video. Generally, when you're looking at items over here, you have a little cogwheel here. I want to point that out first because you can add a lot of different things. Not all of these are, I believe display isn't on there by default, which is weird to me, but it's not. But generally, the things I find the most useful over here are the properties. So if you select an object, it will tell you what type of object it is. In this case, a closed solid poly surface. I'll tell you what type of layer it is, and if you have certain, if this were lines or something and you wanted one line to be different even though it's in a certain layer, so like boulder, you could change your print color and width and line type and everything here. Generally, try to keep those associated to the layers that they need to be, but you can use this occasionally. Speaking of layers, this thing here, this red, white, and blue America layer cake, is where your layers are. So this is just a default setting. If you name every layer, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and you build it that way, good luck. I would highly recommend that you rename something to be like construction lines, which I actually do make red almost all the time. Or this could be, in our case for Grasshopper, I'll say baked geometry. We'll talk about that later, but that's whenever we take things out of Grasshopper into Rhino again. And then, this could be like your topography. So if you have a surface and you don't really want to mess with it, or if you only want to mess with it, you could do that. Just like in AutoCAD or in Photoshop, you can turn off different things. So if I make some construction lines, we're just going to make a polyline or a point object. There we go. If I want to be able to select this, but I don't want to be able to select this, I can lock that first layer. I can't do anything with this now. I can unlock it, can do stuff, or I can turn that off and I can only view this one. Whatever your active layer is, it has to be visible. It will automatically make it visible if you select a layer that's turned off. But this is a better way to hide things once you get to a certain point, because you don't have to worry about, oh, what layer is it on? Do I have to show something? You can just turn the layer off and then not have to worry about it. Be good about your layer management. It will help you later. I have one of these called rendering. This would be if I were looking to essentially make something, a little bit more professional looking. Like I can turn the sun on and off. It affects where shadows and things are. There's actually a whole nother one of these under sun to control all this, like what your location is. Apparently in the Atlantic Ocean. I think you start there. What time of day it is, what year, like all this. So you can do, and we may explore some more advanced daylighting and geological, geospatial information if we get to it this semester. But this is useful for some design development and things. Instead of making yourself a Huidon or whichever device you're using to create these, you can go ahead and just use this as long as you have your stuff pointed north and you understand which direction north is and all that. Generally your y-axis, it shows you up here which direction north is, although you can change it. Anyway, the rendering is really useful when you're going into doing renders through Rhino. You don't have to, but it's an option. You have a material thing here. There's a whole set of materials and material libraries, And you can make your own. We'll go to textiles and we'll go to denim because why not? And we will make this thing denim. You see it doesn't show up here. It's only going to show up whenever you render. So I've got my hard blue jean mouse shell thing. Don't expect a lot out of these materials. You will have to either tweak or modify them to make them be actually good. You can probably get them to a photoshoppable state, but don't expect this to be your Twinmotion Lumion replacement if you're really dead set on very realistic types of renders. Display is probably one of the most important ones. I often change what this is, or I might make the background a gradient. It depends on what I'm trying to view and how I'm trying to see it. I just kind of go through moods with this. What's more important are things like showing ISO curves, whether or not you show shadows, whether it's flat shading, whether you show the curves at all, which is by default turned off on renders. Things like mesh wires, surface edges. This is probably the one that I mess with most frequently out of these tabs outside of layers. Just be aware of that. There's also a help tool here. If you select one of these tools, it will kind of explain exactly what's happening. As you're starting out, you're probably going to want to use this almost all the time. My 40-minute video is not going to be as useful as just looking at one of these animations for most of the time. So, by the way, if you see these green numbers here, ignore them. They're not important. A file manager, and of course there are more things here. Feel free to explore some of those. But just wanted to cover those since I totally forgot to in the last video, and I don't want to make this one too long, so we're going to call it there for this.